Brad Kaiserman is the new head of FEMA's flood program. On the job for about 3 weeks, he's already had to answer to allegations of fraud and criminal activity at the expense of some of Sandy's hardest hit families.
I'm not going to sit here and conceal the fact that it happened, because in the last 3 weeks I've seen evidence of it.
You say you've seen evidence of these fraudulent reports.
Yes.
You've seen evidence of what could be criminal activity by using unlicensed engineers.
Yes, which is why I referred it to the Inspector General.
Hurricane Sandy blew a lot of people out of their homes and has already gone well past the initial estimated damage report of some $50 billion. But now it's FEMA itself being blown out of the water by a scathing 60 Minutes report this past weekend, where the fraud is so easy to spot, not even the man in charge can mount an excuse. Let's welcome back to MidPoint the former head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, now a top-rated talker in Denver, Colorado on 630 KHOW. Michael Brown joins us once again on the show. Mike, good to see you.
Always good to see you, Ed.
Mike, were you shocked at all by what you saw in this 60 Minutes report?
No, the flood insurance program has been fraught with fraud for decades. It's a program that the federal government should get rid of. The history is very simple. Insurance companies didn't want to deal with flood claims. They didn't want to deal with that type of property insurance. So they lobbied Congress decades ago and said, why don't you guys take this over and do this program? And ever since then, it's been fraught with problems, mapping issues, claims issues, actuarial problems. It's the kind of program that personifies exactly what, a federal agency should not be doing.
But what does it say to you when Brad Kaiserman says that FEMA received quote-unquote signals of fraud as early as mid-2013, and FEMA only raised the matter with investigators 4 months later, actually several months later, in December of 2014. They dragged their feet on this, Mike.
Well, I think Ed, I think it shows, and I'm going to use a pretty strong word here, but it shows either the ineptitude or the corruptness of government. When we can't build a website, or that costs $600 million for a website, the IRS, there are still political groups in New Mexico 5 years later still waiting for approval from the IRS. We find out, just in the past day or so, that the U.S. State Department, Hillary Clinton, used a private email account. Can you imagine what the issues might be there with regards to the Federal Records Act, or with regard to the security of her transmissions by email? I mean, it is the ineptitude and the corruptness that has permeated the federal government. And the flood insurance program is a great example of a program that should be sent right back to the private sector. This is a private sector problem. Think about it. Insurance companies cover everything. They insure everything, but they don't want to deal with flood, so they pawned it off onto the federal government.
All right, now, you brought up Hillary Clinton, so let me just dovetail right into that here, because we talk about government. Is what has happened to Mrs. Clinton with regard to these emails? She apparently used her own private email account at the State Department. Is this corruptness? Is this arrogance? Or is this simply just ignorance?
Yeah, I don't think it's ignorance at all. I think she has a history of showing exactly what she was doing. Everyone, look, she was the first lady of the United States. She was a United States Senator. She was the Secretary of State. She knows what the Federal Records Act requires. She did this when she was back in Arkansas. It is a pure and simple attempt to not comply with the law so that there is no transparency. You can tie all of this stuff together. The problem with FEMA, the problem with the email, the federal government is out of control. And let me just point one thing out, Ed, that really irritates me. Congress is not doing its oversight. Congress should be holding hearings on all of these issues, holding people accountable, stopping this stuff, and Congress just is like, yeah, whatever.
All right, now before we take a break, and then we're going to do a little bit more on FEMA and get some of the legalese here, 30 seconds, what was your take on Benjamin Netanyahu's speech in front of Congress today?
Fantastic. A real statesman, someone who stood up and drew a line between a country of freedom and liberty and a country of tyranny and darkness. I wish we had a statesman like that in this country.
But will it make any difference in how the president and his people, including John Kerry, approach the nuclear negotiations with Iran?
Not at all. Not at all. This president is oblivious, not even oblivious. He just doesn't care. He's going to do what he's going to do because Congress has shown that they're not willing to stop him. No one's willing to stop him. He's got a free rein, Ed. It's frightening.
And that is a little bit frightening when you look at what may be coming down the road. All right, Michael, please stand by for a couple of minutes here because after the break, we're going to be joined by one who can see plenty of the legal entanglements with the FEMA fraud case and pointing out where homeowners caught in this fraud are heading next. Think about it. There are still people to this day who are waiting for the help that they were promised after Sandy. That and so much more when we continue right here on MidPoint.